The Radio Ashford Feel Good Hour with Sam Griffin and Nigel Jones. Get set for the weekend with a healthier, happier you. Friday lunchtime from 12:30 on the Sam Griffin Show. Radio Ashford 107.1 FM. Or on your smart speaker.
I'm good, and it's great to be back.
Great to have you.
Yeah, good to see you.
I missed you on Friday, but you needed to rest up.
I did indeed.
That's all good. As always fun having you in the studio. Now, honestly, last Friday was Quitters Day.
Yes.
And I did mention it on the show that was the day that most people who had started a new resolution or changing their lifestyle, that was the day they would quit.
Yes. Yeah.
January's a hard month though, right?
Yeah, so you know, this day, which is normally the second or the third Friday, depending on when the year starts, of the day, is given their name National Quitters Day, and was last week.
Yeah.
It is the day traditionally known as when people give up on their New Year's resolutions. Not everybody does, but you know, a few do, should we say, a growing percentage. And the reason for that is because, you know, motivation naturally dips after a couple of weeks of trying something new, and the old routines start pulling you back again. And so this new habit that you're creating hasn't fully formed yet. In the early days, it's new and it's fun, but 2 weeks in, it's January, it's cold, you know, it's post Christmas, you know, you've probably spent a bit too much on the credit card before. In fact, yesterday has a name as well called Blue Monday.
So yes, you've got Quitters Friday and Blue Monday.
Yeah, exactly. It's so the thing to do here is to reframe it.
Yeah.
You know, the reality is, I always say to people, look, you can only run halfway into a field. Because so if you looked at, say, January as a field, and you were going to stop drinking for the whole month, or stop smoking, or do something, or change your diet for the month, that's your resolution. Then if that's the whole field, well, as soon as you're halfway, you've run halfway in.
Yeah.
Now you're running out. Yeah. So and this is really key, because you've done the hard work, you've done the graft. So look at it that way. So you reframe it, and you know, if you're having a craving, or the voice is saying, you know, I fancy having a drink, or I fancy eating something that I didn't want to eat, then really that's actually showing you that you're winning. Because the fact that you're sort of having this craving means you're moving forward. You're out of your comfort zone, and you're starting to move into the new you.
So let's say that blips then, are they failure, or are they just part of that process then? Is that how you would look at it?
Yeah, so I always say there's no such thing as failure. There's only learning.
Yeah.
So and that's a really, really crucial point. So I talked about reframes earlier, and what's important is, like, if you think of like what you're going through as a photograph, and if you put a new frame around it, you can change what the picture looks like. You know, so if you've got like a picture, and all of a sudden you put a really nice sort of like big gold edge around it, then it looks different. Yeah. Or if you take another perspective on it, where you look at it from above or the side, you actually get a different view. So a blip, for example, could be it's only one drink. Reframe it into, you know, I failed could have been the frame, but no, only one drink could be the frame, is another frame you put on it. You could be like, I'm back to square one, could be like a blip, but no, reframe it into, well, it was just one cigarette. I've not failed. So you actually sort of like, you know, changing the way you actually frame the whole thing is so important. So a blip is not a failure at all. It's you've got to learn from it. And there's this classic thing about sort of perception versus perspective. So if you see things through different eyes, you're actually taking perspective on things. Yeah. So step outside yourself and say, well, you know, okay, I've had a blip, but actually I've done really well. I've done sort of, you know, 19, 20 days, and I had a cigarette yesterday, or I had a drink yesterday. Well, that doesn't matter because you literally did 19 days before.
You can do that again.
Yeah, so look at it as just, it was, yeah, exactly, you're running out of the field. Look at it as just one thing that you did. It's not the whole story. It's not your story. And that's all about reframing. So a good thing to do is pretend you're wearing a pair of glasses. So put a new pair of glasses on, which are, I'm going to actually take some perspective on this. I'm going to actually look back through these new glasses and say, well, look, I've done really well over the last 20 days. One little thing is not going to trip me up. And like you just said, I did 19 days. I'm going to go and do another 19 now. And that's the way to frame it.
Yeah. And I think that's the healthiest way to respond, isn't it? But, any other tips for mental and physical ways to respond to these blips?
Yeah, I think the key thing is there's a great parable called the parable of the second arrow. And this is that everything in your life that happens to you, think of it as a first arrow. So that might be I've had a drink, or I've had a cigarette, or I've missed one day from my journey. It's always followed by a second arrow, and the second arrow is the way that you think about it, and that can be self-criticism, and it can literally blow it all out of proportion. So that second arrow is the one that will take you off track, not the first one. The first one is, okay, I had a blip, but it's the second one, if it hits you, that literally will make you start feeling guilty and shame and starting to say to myself, well, I failed. And the reality is, if you know that second arrow is coming, just let it fly by. Just stand out of the way, and take the first arrow out of you. Take the fact that you had that one drink out and just throw it away, because you need to reframe this whole thing. And the second arrow, the parable of the second arrow, is a really, really good way of doing that.
I love that. So we are talking about blips in resolutions. We're going to check in mid-January. Cravings can hit hard. Whenever you give up something, there's moments you go, oh my God, I really do with that.
Yeah.
And I've been there loads of times. What's going on in the brain to make us have those really bad cravings?
Right. So this is all about change, and what's basically happening is there are two voices in your head. There's the old you, the craving, saying, go on, have one won't hurt. And the reason why it feels uncomfortable is because you've created a new you, which is, I don't want that. I want to live without that. And so there's a little bit of a battle going on. And I like to sort of think of these two voices like two sort of wolves. Yeah, like two wolves having a little sort of an argument inside your head. Yeah. So the old wolf is, it's going to be stuff like, a drink won't hurt you. Go on, have one now. Or you've had a hard day, you deserve it. And, it's that sort of stuff. Just this once, it won't matter. And, we've all heard this. And yet it can start to get on top of you if you let it. So think of it as an old wolf, and it's talking to you. And this old wolf normally is triggered by something. So it could be a time of the day. So if it's drinking, it might have been 6 o'clock. You've just finished work. You fancy a drink, and all of a sudden the old wolf's there. Yeah, go on. You've worked hard today. Or it might be a location. You've met a friend in a pub or a cafe, and they've had a beer. And so you're being triggered, and that's bringing the old wolf out. So the way to look at this, and I found this really, really powerful, is to imagine that this new wolf is really, really the one that's going to win through. And what you've got to do is you've got to realize that there's always going to be like this banter going on between these two wolves, but the power is which one you feed. Because if you feed the old wolf, he's going to win. So, but if you feed the new wolf, then he'll grow bigger, she'll grow bigger, and eventually the old wolf will die because you're not feeding it. So just remember that there's two wolves, and the one that wins is the one that you feed. So, but really, the fact that you're having that conversation means you're winning, because it's the new you that's evolving. It's not a conversation unless there's a new you, and this new you is like growing bigger and bigger and bigger, and therefore the craving, or the old wolf, is being seen.
Now, obviously, that's one top tip. Is there any other tips you can help?
Yeah, so a good way is to use a metaphor like a waves crashing on a beach. When I stopped drinking over 5 years ago, I used to go down to the beach and just watch the waves crash onto the shore, because a craving is really like that. You know it's only going to last a few seconds. I think the maximum they last is 30 seconds. Yeah, a push you might get it to 45, but it's not going to be more than that. So think about it, like you've got a 45-second window to sort of get rid of the craving. And look at the waves on the beach. They come in, they grow, they get big, but then they crash and they get small, and then they go away, they disappear. And if you can't make it to the beach, watch a YouTube video. You can watch lovely images of waves crashing, and that's a tip, is to think of it that way. The other thing is to actually think about willpower as something that actually is like a resource, and you can literally save it up during the day. So it's proven psychologically that we can bank our willpower and keep it for when we need it. So if you think about, say, I don't know, Formula One or something like that, they save the energy on their battery so they can go a bit quicker in the straight. And this is exactly the same thing. If you know 6 o'clock is going to be a bit of a tough time for you, then keep your willpower for then, because you're going to need it then to sort of to jump in. And the other thing about sort of these cravings is or what you can do is use some energy. If you have a craving, do something. Sort of jump up and down on the spot, go for a walk, drink some water, do something different.
Turn up some music and sing along to it.
Exactly, yeah. And
that'll help it pass.
Well, exactly. It'll pass so quickly. It'll pass really, really quickly.
Now, Maldive Steve's been in touch. He said, New Year's resolutions are easy. I said I would go fishing twice a week and managing at least 3 times at the moment.
Brilliant.
I also said I wouldn't eat broccoli, which I've stuck with. Honestly, there's always one. I'm glad you enjoyed the fishing. That's what we're finding all about. Now, if someone falls off the wagon completely, which again does happen, I've been there, especially with alcohol though, mine's more food related. How can we avoid that massive spiral?
Okay, so I really love this, because if you look at where this term comes from, falling off the wagon, if you go back to like the sort of turn, I think it was the turn of the 20th century, so the late 1800s.
Victorian era.
Yeah, so there was a big temperance movement at the time where there was lots of people drinking, and the temperance movement was to stop drinking. And at the same time as that was happening, the streets were pretty dirty in those days. And they used to have these water carts that would go around the actual streets, washing down the streets. And they were called water carts. And people who were stopping drinking said, I would rather drink the water off the water cart than alcohol. So they were on the water cart, or on the cart, and that evolved into being on the wagon. So that's where it comes from. So traditionally, you say I'm on the wagon means I'm not drinking. Now, if you really analyze the wagon, there's only a few ways you can actually fall off it. So this is really important. So you can jump off, which you can do at your own. It's your decision to do. You can fall off. And that normally is because you're probably standing too close to the edge. And by that, I mean, maybe you really haven't sort of decided that you want to stop drinking, or it's not really in your identity yet. So you're dabbling with maybe trying it again. So you fall off. You can get pulled off the wagon, which means you might be some friends who are still drinking or still smoking, going, go on, have one. And they grab you and pull you off the wagon. Or you can get pushed off. And that happens when, say, a couple or some friends have decided to do something together, and then one cracks and says, come on, let's go and do it together. So falling off the wagon or getting off the wagon can be in a few ways, but the important thing to remember is this. If you're solidly in the middle of the wagon, then there's no way you can leave it. So I would say, get yourself in the middle of the wagon, put yourself in a room in the middle of the wagon, lock the door in there, so you're in there all the time.
Stay on the wagon.
Yeah, to stay on the wagon. The only person that actually makes you jump off the wagon is you. And that's so important. Absolutely. You're doing it. No one else is doing it. And if you believe someone else is doing it, then you're you're living some sort of victim story, or some blame game, or it's always someone else. It's not me. But the reality is, it's you.
100%.
Ashford, feel good out with Sam Griffin and Nigel Jones. Get set for the weekend with a healthier, happier you. Whoa. Friday lunchtime from 12:30 on the Sam Griffin Show. Radio Ashford, mid on 7th and 1 FM or on your smart speaker.
You cut that short? Oh, you didn't? Okay.
Now, we are in the midst of January. For some, dry January. People take on a challenge of not drinking throughout the whole of January.
Yeah.
And beyond. You know, some people then go, oh, you know what, I did January, I'll continue on. What helps people get through the month? And then obviously with that in mind, keep going. Especially for dry January.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake people make is they try to do it on their own. And stopping drinking, really, the key to success is to join another tribe. And by that I mean find other people who are stopping as well, and start hanging around with them. And that doesn't mean you have to sort of, you know, go out with them or meet them. You can meet them online.
Yeah, forums and stuff.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And so the easiest way to do this is to join like a community, and there's lots of them out there. I work with Alcohol Change UK, and they're the charity behind the Dry January Challenge, and they have an app called the Try Dry app, which is free, and it's like a community, because once you join that, you can get daily emails, you can get check-ins, you can talk to other like-minded people in the community groups and the Facebook groups around that. So I think the stats show that the people who do Dry January and download the app, so they're doing the official challenge, have a far, far greater, I think it's double the chance of making it through to the end. And so, you know, I don't know the exact figure, but it's well over like 16, 17 million people start Dry January. But that's the unofficial one. But if there's over 250,000 people downloading the app, and a good percentage of them, over half, actually complete. And so that's one tip I would say is join a tribe. And there's a few out there. There's the Dry, which is DRYY, which is an app, which is a great community that's got 20,000 members. There's Life Beyond Booze, which is a Facebook group, really worth joining. A friend of mine runs that, and just again, you're joining a tribe and you're with other people. So I think, you know, there's loads and loads of tips you can do to get you through the month of January and not drinking. And in fact, obviously I wrote a whole book on this called Walking Back to Happiness. But if I was to pick out sort of a few, I would say the key one is to change your identity. So and to a non-drinker from day one. So just say I'm not a drinker trying to become a non-drinker. I'm now a non-drinker. Yeah. And you know, it's funny, like you'd look at people's sort of Facebook pages or their Instagram or their social media, whatever their social media is, and a lot of people have a picture of themselves with a drink in their hand. Yeah. You know, and so that shows you that alcohol is actually part of who they are, and it really can cut right into someone's identity. Yeah. And so it's important that if drinking is your identity, then it's going to be very, very hard for you to change unless you change your identity. And so it's really upstream stuff, because if you change your identity, everything downstream changes. You know, if you are a non-drinker, then it's so much more straightforward to change your behaviour, because non-drinkers don't drink. And to change your environment. Where do you go? Well, I don't hang out in pubs every night, or I don't sort of, you know, go to the off license on my way home from work, because that's downstream. I've changed my identity upstream. So changing your identity for me is probably the biggest thing you can do. It's absolutely massive. And, you know, little tips you can do as well. You can. I always, in the early days, I used to have a calendar on my fridge door. And so every day I would tick off the day which I'd done. Actually, I used to tick the day off in the morning, knowing that the whole day was ahead of me because I was that confident I was going to do it. I decided today I'm not going to have a drink. And, the great thing about putting it on the fridge for me was it was the gateway to the booze. So that's where, you would be opening it to pull out the bottle of wine or have a beer. So, but now I was actually putting a cross on the front of it saying, well, actually, this is another day alcohol free. So, yeah, so having a calendar on the fridge is good. I kept a journal as well, which I think is really important. Because you're going through a life-changing process, and it's really good to sort of write down what happened to you. Did you have a craving? How did you get over that craving? What your triggers? Yeah, exactly, and that's so important because your journal allows you to grow because you can learn from your mistakes and you can like read it the next day and so actually I went through this a few days ago and I conquered it. So having that there in black and white is really important. Daily journal important. A calendar on the fridge. Read as much as you can. Just get some quick literature books, as they're called, which is alcohol-free living books, and just read about how other people stop or how you can stop drinking because there's lots of stuff out there. I also sort of say to people, draw a seesaw and put on one side of it all the positive things you still think about alcohol, if there are any, and on the other side have all the negative things. And you'll soon find that side where all the positives that stuff is gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you really unpack those positives, you'll find that they're actually, most of them, in fact all of them, are limiting beliefs that you've made up. Some people say I need alcohol to socialize, or I need alcohol to have fun, or it gives me a good night's sleep. That's just simply not true. As soon as you start unpacking it and talking about it and analysing it, you realise that all the positives on the positive side of the seesaw don't exist, and they should be all shifted to the negative side. Don't look at dry January as a test. It's not like, oh God, yeah, I passed, I did it. Look at it, what you're learning about yourself, what you're learning about your body, learning about your sleep, learning about the way you just are mentally and physically will change if you take alcohol out of your diet. And you learn a lot about yourself. It's not a test. It's literally learning of who you are. Use the reframe, right? And we talked about reframes earlier on. Let's reframe dry January as a launch pad. It's a rocket launch pad. You're the rocket and you're going to launch yourself into a new you. Yeah. So long-term change is really all about changing your identity. And so identity is really made up of the main major beliefs that you have about yourself. And just bringing this back to sort of drinking or smoking, if you are caught up in a habit like that, then it can become your identity, because you're doing it every day. And so you actually believe there's no way out of this, or how could I possibly stop drinking? How could I possibly stop smoking or vaping? Or how could I lose weight? Your identity becomes the person who you want to change. And so it's the change happens when you literally start changing who you are as opposed to what you do, and that's really, really important. And so there's some really great ways to do this, and it's really straightforward. I mean, you should look at yourself and say, well, what are the values or the beliefs that I want to get rid of? Because that's really the start of all this. I am a smoker. I am a drinker. I'm overweight. Get rid of it. Yeah. So immediately say, right, I don't believe that about myself anymore. So you write down the traits that you don't like. Right, so that's the first thing to do, and take some time over it. Spend a day, 2 days, write it in a journal. Like, right, I'm going to sort of work over this week of the things I don't like about myself, and write them down. And be really honest, and then look at yourself as well and say, well, what are the things I do like about myself that I want to keep? And there'll be loads of great stuff in there. So for me, for example, when I stopped drinking, one of the ones that I wanted to get rid of was I am a drinker. Just wanted to get rid of that. I someone else, do you drink? I used to drink. I'd rather say that. That's what I wanted to say. So the other thing is, what traits do you, as I said, do you want to keep? Well, I've always been hardworking, so yeah, I wanted to keep that. So you can slowly start building up your new identity. You know what you don't want. what you've got and you want to keep. The third one's really important. Is what new traits do you want that you don't have at the moment? It's like, what values do you want to add? That might be, well, I want to be calmer. I want to be more consistent. I don't want to be a pleaser anymore, or I don't want to be such a perfectionist. There's loads of different things you can say. Well, this is the new me. This is who I want to become. And so just by doing those three things, getting rid of the old ones, keeping the ones you want, and bringing some new ones, you can start to build a picture of your new identity. And that's really powerful, because when you change your story about who you are, then you change your life. And that's a classic line: change your story, change your life. So that for me is the way to do long-term change. You really have to look at who you are and who you want to be. Look, if you're still in dry January, you're not behind at all. You're further in than you think. And that's really important. Is to look at the positives. Look what you've achieved. Some of you might have done 10 days out of the 20. Wow, that's great. That's 10 days than you wouldn't have done if you hadn't done dry January. So look at the positives and take from the positives. And what we said at the top of the show was, you can only run halfway into a field and then you're running out the other half. At the moment we're just over halfway through the month, so we're running out of the month, and it's all downhill and sailing. So I think keep that perspective, that look at your positives and learn from your positives, and remember there's no such thing as failure. There is only learning. I would also say, don't compare yourself. I mean, this is a massive issue that people have, and it's you stop judging yourself on perfection, or others around you. Like, oh, they did it differently. They've gone longer than me. Because that can really sort of upset the cart and upset the journey. And I'd also say, not a lot of people do this, and it's such a great tip. It's to zoom in, not out. So when you zoom out, you sort of look at everything around you, and you become more of a perfectionist and like, how's it all going? But if you zoom in, you go in on the smaller stuff. What am I going to do today? Not what's it going to be like in 1 year's time. I mean, that's good to do that, but zoom in as well, and find, what am I going to do today? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to drink lots of water. I'm not going to drink. That's how momentum, comes about. All successful goals are achieved by daily goals. They're not achieved by the big goal. They're the things you do on a daily basis. Look at your progress. Better sleep. Might have lost some weight. You might have got you might be calmer in your mentality. Better choices in life. You'll be noticing stuff that is happening to you if you've stopped drinking for like 20 days. You really will. Or if you've done like 15 out of those 20 or 10 out of those 20, there will be differences that you notice. And that's really, really important.